Namaste and welcome, everyone. So glad to have you back this week. We'll now do episode 8, chapter 10 from the invitation, a veritable spiritual feast. It's turning out to be that way, it seems to me, as I weigh these words deeply within. So chapter 10, the title of which is, So What Else is New? This is such a fascinating conversation, Waldo pronounces Penelope. Sometimes it feels like what I suppose conversations between Jesus and his apostles must have sounded like. I often wonder, though, whether they ever really got what Jesus was teaching them. They seemed so steeped in the letter of the law oftentimes that they vacillated between that and the truth of what Jesus spoke. I think you said it quite clearly, my dear, Waldo says approvingly. Let's take this example for a moment. You recall, I'm sure, the admonition given in the Bible to giving up your father and mother. I have said it this way. I shun father and mother and wife and brother when my genius calls me. I would write on the lintels of the doorstep, whim. I hope it is not sometimes better than whim at last, but we cannot spend the day in explanation. So expect me not to show cause why I seek or why I exclude company. What I must do is all that concerns me, not what people think. This rule, equally arduous in actual and in intellectual life, may serve for the whole distinction between greatness and meanness. It is harder because you will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. It is easy in the world to live in the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after your own. But a great man is he who in the midst of the crown keeps the perfect sweetness, the independence of solitude. The objection to conforming to usages that have become dead to you is that they scatter your force. It loses your time and blurs the impression of your character. Do your work, and you shall reinforce yourself. A man must consider what a blind man's bluff is this game of conformity. So what we have here, concludes Penelope, it seems to me, is a commitment to a single-minded approach to finding and living what rings true to us as the expression of our divinity lived. To succumb to the views of another over our own would be to abandon or separate ourselves from the essence of what rings true to us in favor of what can only be designated as outside authority. It all comes down to how we wish to govern our life, either through the illusory form of external authority or the truth of inner authority, the consciousness that reigns within us. In this sense, the mother, father, brother, and all the rest to which Jesus referred, and you the same, are nothing more or less than an outside authority to which we erroneously give our power. Such thought forms, so to speak, errors of kin all, cannot ever meet the test of our own truth. That sounds right to me, adds Christo, particularly so because any time we bow to outer authority, we are giving our power over to someone else's view of what we should be or do. In each instance, we are to follow only what we have discerned as truth for us, thus reuniting with our greatest source of real power. By living from the impeccability of this word, the truth of our being, we summon the empowerment of the path of righteousness we obediently follow. This is such a simple law of governance, Henry adds, yet so few have even contemplated its absolute value, let alone followed it. Failure to do so has left our society largely bereft of authentically demonstrating the divine character it is. We show what we are to one another by the government we vote for. A vote in this case meaning to what we commit our conviction. And because we have erroneously constructed a life and a God that is so small and separate, our faith matches those images with an equally limited value of their real essence. We thus make ourselves vulnerable to the whims of others and largely prove our lives to match only their suggestions of limitation. This is an interesting proposition you make, Penelope says, because it ties so closely to the spiritual idea of first cause and effect. We already know that whatever one uses as a seed of creation is that which must manifest, as long as this conviction or faith is fully placed in that idea. The law of creation will manifest precisely what that seed has as its intention. An acorn has within it all it needs to create the mighty oak it most naturally is. Likewise, when we finally become aware of and acknowledge our divinity, then we come to understand that this is the only real conviction we are to demonstrate. Instead of committing to the expression of some figment of illusion, some error of thought, belief, or opinion, we commit to the expression of what we really are, the essence of divine love. This is the fullness of God's intention expressed, and because we are one with God, of our intention expressed. If we would just stop for a moment, in order to come at life from this enlarged perception, we would come to perceive our purpose with indelible clarity. Our purpose, if understood and demonstrated only by applying the faith of God in God's agenda, that is, the truth we find within, is demonstrated faithfully as our only agenda. This must be so because we are the essence of consciousness and not the essence of error. There is no opposition to our divine essence. We only think there is when we give credence to or place our limited form of faith in the mental midgetry of the ego consciousness way. Contrarily, we expand our universe of truth by investing the faith of consciousness in what is. This is what we use to determine the worth of our investment, the nature of the government to which we subscribe. And one views that subscription as Waldo, it is easy to see in what one is investing their life. It all falls back to cause and effect, and whether one formulates life from the force of external authority or the empowerment of inner authority. I like the way you say it, Penelope. To demonstrate our life from the root of consciousness is to demonstrate the faith of God. This is precisely what we have been discussing all evening, and what we have to contribute to the lives of others, that they may be enlightened and then transcend into the truth of what they are. If only is exactly right, Crystal interrupts. If only we could help people see that by focusing on their illusory ways, they can only end up with an erroneous view or act. Illusion is nothing but a second-hand map that leads one to a hollow life, devoid of purpose and fulfillment. You are helping more than you think, Henry assures Christo. The course you've chosen to follow leads all who come to the fore in precisely the proper direction. Although we might think that we have no absolute way of knowing how many more are influenced in a similar direction by their own example, we do know it absolutely out of our understanding of the law of first cause. The truth of first cause can create only what it is, and thus a perpetual motion machine is set in order, simply by that very first divine inspiration being set free into the universe as the faith of God expressed. Of illusion, truth cannot be made. By teaching the law of first cause as you do, the loving way is guaranteed. Yes, I said guaranteed. Guaranteed to manifest as life on an ever-increasing scale of love's demonstration. Soon, as you would say it, the 100th monkey will have seen the light and give way to expression, and all others like it. Divinity will reign at last. I couldn't agree more with that, Krista rejoins. We have found as long as we stay in the metaphorical mediation of birth as the evolution of a new divine inspiration coming into being, we can detach the normal illusory credence from some material form as its requirement. When we attach some illusory birth of a son or a daughter to our perception of life, we produce a physical child. It's just that this physical child is nothing more or less than a metaphor that presides over its reflection of truth for us, about us. On the other hand, when we instead serve as a midwife for bringing to the surface some imagery that depicts truth of what we really are, then we are automatically detached from any necessity to project it outward. It is only from lack of awareness that we project these illusory images onto the physical plane. It's the way we see what we have failed to acknowledge within us. Conceived in the purity of the loving way, the spiritual idea cleanses any and all ties to illusion, for it has been born of the spirit, consciousness with which we are one. This is the Son of God of which we speak, the Son of God to differentiate from the physical Son of Man. The protection of our inner separation is the highest physical form that recognizes the necessity of expressing only the truth of being. I'm so glad we're on the same wavelength, Waldo affirms. In this seat of congruity, I'm reminded of that popular fable, at least in our time this was so, of the sot who was picked up dead drunk in the street, carried to the Duke's house, washed and dressed, and laid in the Duke's bed, and on his waking, treated with all obsequious ceremony like the Duke, and assured that he had been insane, owes his popularity to the fact that it symbolizes so well the state of man, who is in the world a sort of sot, but now and then wakes up, exercises his reason, and finds himself a true prince. Ha! That's a good one, Waldo, says Christo. We'll have to use that one in our next seminar. It's such a good story to reinforce the truth of our divinity. Which is why I shared it, actually, Waldo returns, and a wry smile pointed in Christo's direction. We spend too much energy living in illusion, don't we? Penelope says reflectively. We spend ourselves as physical beings, either in the past or future, or in the fear of something from the past repeating itself in the future. But all this does is distract us time after time after time from spiritual reality. As I have learned so well, even when I expend energy on wonderful memories of loving incidents gone by, I am just distracting myself from being the present I am in the present moment, which is all there really is after all. The present that I am is living true to myself, the divine essence activated in this moment, and blessing all in its path by its spiritual authenticity. So any single moment I spend in the past is living a lie, rather than as truth personified. Of course, the same is true when I place my thoughts on the future, worrying or fretting about things non-essential, so to speak. When we go to the future, it's out of fear, and mostly out of fear of lack. We fear most lacking something we think we now don't have. And yet spiritually, we are all we can ever be, and all we could ever have at our disposal to be precisely that, divine. So here too, lodged in the future, we live only illusion. It is incumbent upon us to place ourselves only in the present moment, so be only what we are instead of what we have come to think we are. In some place our spiritual being doesn't even exist. In this way, in a life of spiritual authenticity, we give up our life of old for all others, thus providing a sterling example for the expression of selfless love. So true, Penelope, inserts Emerson. Man is ashamed before the blade of grass or the blowing rose. The roses under my window make to reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today, and there is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud can burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower there is no more. In the leafless root there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But man postpones or remembers. He does not live in the present. But the reverted eye laments the past, or heedless of the riches that surround him, stands on tiptoe to foresee the future. He cannot be happy and strong until he too lives with nature in the present, above time. In this way, it is easy for the strong man to be strong, as it is for the weak to be weak. When we have new perception, we shall gladly disburden the memory of his hoarded treasures as old rubbish. When a man lives with God, his voice shall be as sweet as the murmur of the brook, and the rustle of the corn. How beautifully poetic, says Penelope, and what truth you speak. We miss so much beauty as we travel at breakneck speeds on the eagle's byway. I have come to see at last that so many things and that to which others commit their energy are nothing save distractions. At this point, I give but faint attention to such things that occupy the world of illusion. Within me is all I need to discern life's journey for me. As long as I surrender to the authority of divine guidance, I let its beauty surface into the universe. If only more saw life this way, that they would come to understand that as life they are beauty and would not need to look for beauty elsewhere, and yet find it everywhere because it will have come from within each. This is such a rich legacy of which you speak, Penelope, Henry suggests. So many do miss the beauty life simply is in all its fullness. Even when most see beauty, they fail to understand that the only reason they can see beauty in anything is because beauty is everything, including them and all around them. God is that, beauty demonstrated. This truth is what gives full credence to Crystal's frequent declarations that each is God personified, that is, God expressed. God is expressed as you and Waldo and Crystal and all else, including a rose, a tree, a river, whatever. All of it, because it is God expressed, inspiration brought to life so to completion, is beauty's perfection demonstrated. Now this will confuse some who think that perfection means what humans would call flaw. This is not so. For perfection means only that truth or beauty is expressed as the image and likeness of God, of inspiration lovingly discerned, in all its fullness, recreating as it must in exactly that image. In this way, each creation is perfection personified, uniquely individuated, because it is a representational continuation of that endless stream of creation. And creation is beauty in expression. When we can come to see our divinity as the fullness of beauty it is, then images of beauty will come to the surface in ways that will astound. Beauty shows its face in artistic expressions of all kinds, in painting and song and voice, instrumentally as well, and in seemingly mundane, whatever mankind puts creative, inspirational energy to work. It even shows through the hands of the carpenter and the plumber, the housekeeper, the changer of diapers, the one who arranges blooms in a vase, and as one who sets seed in the ground of the loving way. Each is a loving expression of beauty, just as simply listening to someone in need. When we open ourselves to the potential for beauty, that which emanates from the seat of our divinity, the potential is fulfilled over and over and over yet again. It is then that humanity will shift from its attitude of separation and reconvene in the home of awareness, lovingly activating only what rings true as the way for all life. Now, wouldn't that be a sight for sore eyes? Indeed, such vision would heal the ways of erroneous sight. Once and for all, we'd be witnessing to beauty as all, with ultimate respect for the dignity beauty brings to life. What a glorious ending to separation this would be. Well, here we are once again, Waldo announces, right back in the lap of divinity. In my view, there is a class of men, individuals of which appear at long intervals, so eminently endowed with insight and virtue that they may have been unanimously saluted as divine, and who seem to be an accumulation of that power we consider. Divine persons are character-born, or to borrow a phrase from Napoleon, they are victory organized. They are usually received with ill will because they are new and because they set a bound to the exaggeration that has been made of the personality of the last divine person. Nature never rhymes her children, nor makes two men alike. When we see a great man, we fancy a resemblance of some historical person and predict the sequel of his character and fortune. A result he is sure to disappoint. None will ever solve the problem of this character according to our prejudice, but only in his own high, unprecedented way. Character wants room, must not be crowded on by persons or be judged from glimpses not on the press of affairs or on few occasions. It needs perspective as a great building. It may not, probably does not, form relations rapidly, and we should not require rash explanation, either on the popular ethics or on our own, of its action. Oh, such a man, suggests Christo, is one of beauty made, the beauty you and we all call divine. It is these who inspire, yet many will not take on such inspiration, for the path is indeed too narrow and far too long. At least they think it is so. As you say, Waldo, the cause for this is a mistaken perception that we are mere humans in physical form, rather than spiritual beings rendering divinity. There has been a wide acceptance and profound resonance tied to the real meaning of divine and divinity as our focus of being. At least this is increasingly so in the sessions we are having with our ever-widening breed of newcomers to such awareness. As you well know, Penelope and I are approaching such revelations with the utmost care, making sure that people are gaining new meaning for the value of life in stepwise fashion. Even so, the revelations that come through insight and enlightenment come seemingly instantaneously. So powerful and empowering is the way of truth expressed. We find that all we need do is to take them to the threshold of their own knowledge, to paraphrase Khalil Gibran, so that they can step over that very same threshold as awareness surfaces within each. I have to add, says Penelope quickly on the heels of Crystal's explanation, that the word that comes from the teachings of Jesus had been enormously helpful. This places me in somewhat of a quandary regarding your declarations, Waldo and Henry, that is one ought to consult only the truth within and refrain from being influenced by the views of others. I can see, largely because we have been teaching and learning about going only to an authority for truth, that this is the ultimate authority in all matters. Yet we have learned greatly from the Master Jesus. Help me out here, will you? Do you recall what we said earlier about reading books? That books are not our answer to anything, but yet they are helpful, and that they can, and often do, inspire us to come to truth for us? As I recall, you even agreed with us on this point, Penelope, did you not? Seeing that she did by her affirming nod, Waldo continues. Knowing this, then, how would you apply the same meaning to the teachings of Jesus, or any other master for that matter? Well, of course, it's identical. We obtain inspiration from Jesus as well as from all the other spiritual masters. And we reach inspiration as we feel the resonance between any truth they might convey and that which we hear from within our own being. Thus, enlightenment arrives on the scene, and we either transform our way of thinking, or we immediately transcend the old for the new. Thanks for that prompt and the reinforcement of truth that comes with it, Penelope tentatively concludes. Then, just as suddenly as she had announced her conclusion, she says anew, You know, Waldo, I think I might have a bone to pick with you on the issue of divinity and character. All that is true, that true character, that is divinity, shows its face only infrequently. That doesn't mean character isn't already an integral part of what one is. The only reason character doesn't show more frequently is because most don't see themselves as divine. It is when they do that they finally show their divinity, expressing it as the ultimate in character. In this way, character is just like godliness or truth. It is always present, always what we are, and yet doesn't appear so because we have hidden our light, our real character, under a bushel. What has cloaked the light of truth from being is the belief that we are something other than, and surely less than, divine. In our sessions, for example, as participants become more and more aware of their divinity, we are finding that they display the fullness of character that accompanies awareness of the divine each is. It's the fullness of awareness that we lack, not the truth of our divinity itself. The truth is always present, thus affirming divinity is what simply is, even if we don't readily see it. This is what I meant when I said earlier that listening to others' voices for you only scatter your force. It loses your time and blurs the impression of your character. I couldn't agree with you more, Waldo says. And so, as the final synthesis of all this, he poses, what is it that we must do to reinforce that understanding of the real self, instead of the illusions so many have taken on as themselves? I see that basically two things are in order, answers Penelope. The first is that we show by example that we are divine. Second, by our profound appreciation and celebration of others' divinity, we honor all they already are, so they can more readily come to the realization of this for themselves. In this way, we serve as a bridge of truth, upon which they can stand until they can transcend or cross over the old for the new, thus giving up illusion for the truth of being. There you have it, Waldo responds with a broad smile on his face. You are so aware of such truths, both of you, and I commend you for going within in order to face the inner authority that informs this truth. You both have such a rich relation with consciousness that manifests as you, and all. Most fail to know this is even a possibility, and yet you show the example so clearly that others are undoubtedly inspired by your awareness and demonstration. Take a little sip here. Okay. I think it's fair to say that we also are proud of you for listening within for the fullness of divine creation, adds Henry. Most, even if they do acknowledge and practice their divinity, aren't as fully tuned to the broad band of the spiritual wavelength as you are. By that I mean that you both hear not only the truth, but you also hear it clearly as it is said. So as you repeat it to those who need to hear it in that very special way, they are clearer in their ability to do so. Said another way, you are the teachers who are showing up as those who need to hear what you have to offer, as ready for it, in precisely that fashion and degree. Oh, Henry is absolutely correct, Waldo affirms, and I have special things to convey. Crystal and Penelope begin to get uncomfortable at such praise, and color begins to brighten their cheeks. Now look, says Waldo, as he notices a sudden change in their demeanor. Don't go to your false sense of pride or vanity here. What we're saying is the truth about the two of you. And to suggest that it isn't so is precisely the same form of vanity that makes one think he or she is separate from God. You are of the one, and so why not come to the full awareness of oneness rather than only part of it? Having heard the truth of his commentary, Crystal and Penelope return to the seat of their divinity, releasing all tension found around the illusion they temporarily bore in this regard. Okay then, Waldo continues. What I want to tell you is that you both have been tuning in not only to God's waveband, which is your very own highest self, as you know, but you've been tuning in and resonating with, as you might say, with the remnants of those truths that Henry and I left behind. Well, we really didn't leave them behind. We just posited them in the Akashic records as the vibrations of truth that are recorded for all time and use. Same as so for all the truths that come out of you too. All is recorded there. It is your awareness that has allowed you to be in touch with the truth on many levels, many planes. This is akin to your previous understanding of spiritual telepathy, the exchange of spiritual energy on all levels of being. In a way, is no more from the resonance you feel when arriving at truth for you. But now you know, in case you think you didn't before this, that the resonance is the expression of the immediacy of truth coming into congruence with that which is conveyed through consciousness that demonstrates all you are. This is truly amazing, Penelope proclaims, wide-eyed and with jaw dropped to her chest. Do you mean that what we've been teaching all along, especially in Crystal's case, is a form of transcendentalism as Emersonian philosophy? The only answer to her inquiry comes from the broad, knowing smiles that adorn Waldo and Henry's faces. Instant awareness of truth's meaning likewise lightens up Penelope and Crystal. In that inner communal glow, all are one, as never before witnessed. Okay then, We end chapter 10. We'll go on with chapter 11. Only a few more chapters left in this wonderful book, The Invitation, but I think they need to be considered carefully as we move on to the end time. Chapter 11 is called The Cast of Characters. Some interesting, very, very interesting and penetrating understandings there, to be sure. And so, as we come to the end of this time together this week, I will quote one other post that I've seen that I think is interesting. Can be interesting. It can be interesting when we talk about our own transformation. Consider how hard it is to change yourself, and you'll understand what little chance you have. And pardon me, and let me start over with that. Consider how hard it is to change yourself, and you'll understand what little chance you have in trying to change others. Boy, is that ever a truth. And it's not our job either, by the way, to change others. And so, my dear friends, another week has come and gone. I hope that during this next week, you will take good care of yourself, that you will be well, happy, and full of love, expressing it everywhere you take your wonderful life of love. And so, namaste, my friends. I love you.